let's talk some about money, everyone. I love money, but, well, in this sense, not my personal money. We're talking about money in the pocket of the federal government. The National Assembly has passed the 2020 budget of 10.6 trillion naira. The figure shows an increase of over 260 billion naira from the initial budget of 10.3 trillion naira presented by President Muhammadu Buhari earlier in the year. The National Assembly also increased the benchmark of crude oil from $55 to $57 and retained the exchange rate at 305 naira to $1 as part of the parameters for funding the budget. What is the implication of the adjustment made by the National Assembly? Like you can see on your screen, those are the breakdown for you. Let's get a sense of what this means. The senator, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, take a listen to what he said when they passed the budget.
Please allow for interventions in critical areas such as national security, road infrastructure, mines and state development, health, social needs, water, among others.
So then, what are some of the issues that are being raised here? Because if you look at what has happened here, there's been increase in the budget. The question is, does the National Assembly have the power to increase the figures and there's been a lot of debate whether they can jack up the figure or whether they can remove or add. Those are some of the issues. Another issue is the debt servicing part of it. Can we afford it as a nation? Where those figures are being jacked up, are they important? What should we be focusing on? I have joining me Mr. Muda Yusuf, Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He joins me here in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf.
Thank you very much.
Interestingly, that you're not in Lagos today, as always.
Thank you.
What comes out to you in this budget? Your biggest fear?
Well, my biggest worry is revenue. Because if you look at the record of revenue performance over the last 2 years, at least the figures that were presented for the 2018, when the minister was presenting the medium-term expenditure framework, we saw a significant negative variance in practically all revenue heads, and on average, we'll be talking about between 30 to 40% shortfall in revenue. So if you have a situation where you are grappling with issues of revenue shortfall, and here we are now still increasing the budget. So I have my fears as to whether anything can change dramatically as far as revenue is concerned.
The fear of where the money is going to come from.
Where the money is going to come
Obviously,
from.
we are borrowing more. We might borrow more than the 2.2.
Of course, we are almost reaching even a particular an elastic limit as far as borrowing is concerned.
I mean, with borrowing, Mr. Yusuf, before you go away from there, are we in trouble with borrowing?
Of course, we're in some form of trouble.
But we want to borrow more. The president has asked to borrow more money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not comfortable with that. I won't say whether it makes sense or not.
No, because
but I'm not comfortable.
Financial sense, in the economic sense, is what I mean. Not in more. I mean, in financial, in economic sense.
Yeah.
Does it make sense for us to borrow more?
No.
But the federal government says, look, they are borrowing this money to fix major infrastructure.
You see, it is one thing to borrow, because if you borrow, you have to service the debt. So the challenge with the borrowing now is the sustainability of the debt. If you have a situation, I mean, look at this budget that has just been passed. The debt service component is higher than the capital budget. The debt service component is about 2.7 trillion. It was even increased. The capital provision is about 2.46 trillion. And as a percentage of revenue, it's a substantial percentage of revenue. So if you have that kind of scenario already, we are talking about existing stock of debt. So if you are not talking about adding, I mean, what the president was proposing was about 30 or 29 billion US dollars. I mean, certainly it's not sustainable. But it's still a proposal that has not been presented to the National Assembly. So when it gets there, I'm sure there'll be some deliberations around it. But generally, the debt situation, for me, is something that one should worry about.
For all of our viewers, this is one of the steps in passing the budget. When the National Assembly passes the budget, it doesn't mean that is the final stage. The president will have to receive it, look at it, and if it's comfortable, he will assent it. If it's not, he might return it to them with adjustment. But what we've seen today, in the areas, in the critical areas, education, health, that they have increased, does it make sense?
It makes sense. Because I see that under the capital allocation of the budget, the works and housing seems to get the largest chunk of the capital allocation in the budget. And given the challenges that we have, especially with the state of our roads and all of that, I think it makes a lot of sense. And if we must actually progress this economy, we need to focus a lot more on building infrastructure.
But I mean, a lot of people will tell you that, fine, it's good to build infrastructure, but the question of social investment, jobs, job creation are very important. When the mass of our people are working and they are productive, then you can generate more money. So in this sense, agriculture as a sector, shouldn't that sector be getting more attention, Mr. Yusuf?
No, you see, if you don't fix infrastructure, the productivity of agriculture will remain low. If you don't fix infrastructure, the productivity in manufacturing will remain low. So infrastructure is very basic for productivity. And one of the challenges we face today is the productivity of all of these sectors. If the productivity is low, sustainability will be low, mortality rate will be low, margins will be low, and their capacity to grow will be low.
But the variance of our inflow, revenue generation, isn't that still a problem? Because if oil is still very funny in terms of the global trading of oil. I mean, the prices are still very funny. We saw what happened in Saudi Arabia and how it had Iranian situation and all of that, and how it affected the global price of oil. And that's our dependent. We're solely dependent on that. What are your concerns about this?
Well, the concern about that is an indication of the fact that our economy is still highly vulnerable. If we have a situation where, we are having almost 50% or 60% of our revenue coming from oil, and we have about 95% or so of our foreign exchange earnings coming from the oil sector, that means that the economy is very vulnerable. Vulnerable in the sense that if anything happens, if there's a little shock with the oil sector, all the fundamentals will collapse.
Let's close, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Mr. Yusuf, with this. I need your sincere opinion. Millions of Nigerians are watching you right now. If you have the power and you have the opportunity to change something, would you declare a state of emergency in our economy, and what will you be fixing urgently?
Well, of course, we'll declare a state of emergency. And what we need to fix urgently is still infrastructure.
Like power?
Power, roads. Because if you don't have that, it is difficult for the private sector to function.
So when you don't have money, you still have to borrow?
You still have to borrow, but it's not only borrowing that's the source of finance. There are other ways of sourcing.
Like selling assets, national assets and all
maybe that. Maybe equity financing, maybe creating the environment where private sector can bring their capital.
Professor Salami-led committee can get things done in terms of advising this government?
I believe they can. They can.
Right.
But it's one thing to advise. It's
another thing to execute it.
Yeah, to execute the advice.
Mr. Muda Yusuf, it's always refreshing to hear from you and some of your thoughts on this matter. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Muda Yusuf is the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. His thoughts on the budget and the economy of Nigeria. He said he will declare state of emergency if he has his power or fix infrastructure. We'll leave it at that, everyone. That's our show for tonight. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimberley. I'll see you again.